Welcome to today's session. I am Siddhesh Prabhugaonkar, a Microsoft certified trainer and instructor with Pluralsight as well as Crowd Solution Architect. Today we are going to learn navigating Azure OpenAI Studio interface. Today we are going to learn about Azure OpenAI service, how to provision a resource of that service. We will walk through Azure OpenAI Studio to get the list of models. We'll also see how to deploy those models and test them using various playgrounds. We will also see how to filter the harmful content using content filter. Along the way, we will look at few prompts. We'll also see how to generate code, generate images using DALL-E model, and finally, how we can use our own data using grounding content. So let's get started. Generative AI models produce new content such as text, code, and images based on a natural language prompt as an input. Azure OpenAI service allows us access to those generative AI models developed by OpenAI in Azure Cloud Platform. We can use this service for content generation, summarization, image understanding, semantic search, natural language generation, code generation, code translation, and so on. When we are using this service in Azure, we benefit from the security, private network, built-in responsible AI, and integration of other services provided by Azure Cloud Platform. We can access this service through REST APIs, SDKs, or web-based interface in the Azure OpenAI Studio, which is the topic of today's session. Azure OpenAI service is in limited access as of now, and we need to apply for the access at the given link. Once we have the access in our Azure subscription, we can then go ahead and create resource of this service in Azure portal. The way we would create a resource of this service is similar to how we do it for other services in Azure. First, we have to choose specify region or location, give a unique name, choose a pricing tier, and we can then go to OpenAI Studio and deploy a model and then use it, test it, and so on to provision this resource. Once we have provisioned this resource, then we can go to a web portal called Azure OpenAI, wherein we can view and deploy various generative AI models. We can also connect to our own data sources and use our own data in data files, other data sources, and so on for creating the custom models and fine-tuning them. We can then go ahead and test these models in visual playgrounds such as chat, which is available for text generation in GPT 3.5 and later models, completions playground for older models which only support text completions, playground for custom and co-pilot like experiences. When we go to the studio, we'll be able to see the menu on the left hand side. We can go to respective one and the different model families of generative AI models available in Azure. GPT-4 are the newest, most capable chat-based models with multimodal support for text, audio, visual, and so on for language as well as code generation. GPT 3.5 models only support text completions and are used for natural language and code generation models. Embedding models can be used to convert text into text or code samples. Finally, DALI can be used for image generation. When we go to all these models listed there, we can also create custom models and fine tune them. So once we go to the OpenAI, we can deploy one or more instances of each available model. The number of deployments will depend on your quota, which you can see in the portal. We can also use portal or Azure CLI commands to deploy a model in Azure OpenAI Studio. First, we would select a model, then version, give a unique deployment name, a bunch of other parameters, and click on Create. Once we have created or deployed the model, we can then go to specific playgrounds and test this model. If we go to chat playground, provide system message and examples. A system message gives a context or roles the specific tone, style, personality, or character. And we can give examples for few short learning, which we are going to see in the demo. And get the completions or response from the model. On the right hand side, we will see configuration for configuring different parameters while submitting the prompt. We can supply or configure max response, temperature, top speed, and few other of these parameters. We can control the model behavior through the parameters by configuring them in Studio or in the API call. Max response will limit the number of tokens the response can include. It limits the number of tokens in the response. Temperature will control randomness, and it can go from 0 to 1. A lower temperature means it will generate a deterministic response, whereas higher temperature is going to produce creative, refers to top probability. Again, it controls the randomness similar to temperature, but uses a token selection to likelier tokens with low probability. And increasing top P lets the model choose from tokens with both high as well as low likelihood. It is recommended that either you use temperature or top P, but don't configure both. What is a token? Token are the text measurements, roughly 4 English character long, and they are used to measure the model capacity, quota, or content organizer. If we go to this link and provide any text as I am learning generative AI solution using Azure OpenAI, notice the token generated from the text and model. Rather, token IDs, the numerical token IDs are given as an input. So once we give a prompt as an input, it is converted to token IDs, and token IDs are given as an input to the model. We can use prompts for different tasks to get completions from the model. For example, we can use it to classify content and identify a sentiment, positive, negative, neutral. We can ask it to generate new content, write a transform from one format to another format, such as JSON, XML, and so on. We can use it to translate from one spoken language to another spoken language, and also to translate code from one programming language to another programming language. We can give us input parameter, or we can give some text and ask it to continue with that story or text and complete it. We can put it in question answering mode and ask specific questions to get relevant answers, wherein we can provide a setup, also configure some parameters so that model can give us nuanced, appropriate completions or answers. We talked about system message when we talked about the playground. This you can use to get to talk or act like an American old Western film character, and it will respond in that style and tone. Or ask it to act like a command line terminal, and it will respond with the commands to specific language or motivational speaker. So we can give a particular style tone using system message. Let's look at some scenarios of prompts we can use to generate code. Here is a first one. We can ask the model task in a specific programming language, and the model will respond with the relevant code. We can also ask it to translate the code from one programming language to another programming language. Or let's say some existing developer has written a code and you are not able to understand it. In that case, you can ask the model to explain the code, and the model will respond with what this code does, and also if it is implementing any algorithm. And also specify any boundary conditions or specific scenarios. We can also ask it, example, here is a, instead of calculating average, we are assigning total. So the model will respond with the corrected code and also explain what issues were fixed. We can also ask the model to improve the efficiency of it will be higher, and it will respond with an efficient version having a lower time complexity. We can also ask it to refactor or optimize the code. For example, I am calculating a total price using the item name and quantity. We are using or readable code. Rather, we can use a hash map or a key value data structure to store far maintainable and readable code. These were some examples for working with code. Let's take a look at how we can generate images using DALL-E model. On the studio, we can go to DALL-E Playground you want. Also, you can configure settings such as size of the image that you want, style, or the quality of the image. And the DALL-E generate the creative images as per your prompt. Let's say if I want to use my own data for grounding the answers to the given query or prompt, then we can use retrieval augmented generation for grounding the answers. How we can configure this in Azure OpenAI Studio? First, we would have to set up the data source or data sources, configure the studio or your application to connect to that data source, and then use the Azure OpenAI model, which is now using our data for grounding. Here is a simplified diagram to understand the whole process. Let's say I have an application wherein I will give the prompt or question or query. Once that is given, Now, before coming to the process, first we would have to set up the data sources. It could be files in blob storage, it could be databases, Cosmos DB, and so on. We would create and configure Azure AI Search to connect to this all these data sources and index them. We are going to index the data. So whenever a query comes, the query will be sent to Azure and documents from the indexed data. It is going to pass that query and the matching results to Azure OpenAI models, and the model is going to act on it and give us the response as a completion. So this is how we can implement RAG and ground our data with our own data sources. How can we set it up on Azure? Go to add your data section and click on add data source. This will give you a pop-up. You can select the specific data source. Then, since we are uploading the files, we would need a resource of Azure Blob Storage and Azure AI Search resource for indexing that data. Once we have configured this, which search type do we want, semantic or keyword? We are going to use keyword, which is low cost. Semantic will give you noun answers, but it is let the indexing be complete. Once done, you can also click on advanced setting, which will allow you to either limit your responses to your own data sources. If check, that means if, let's say, this is our data source and this is the LLM's knowledge base, and if we check it, if the answer is not found, then we would get that there is no response found for that particular query. Strictness will determine how aggressively you want to do the filtering of the similar documents or data within your data sources. Low strictness means the higher the strictness, it is going to filter out more similar documents. Next, retrieved documents. How many retrieved documents or matching results you want to pass on to the LLM model? The higher the number, remember that we can use content filter to filter out harmful content, not only in prompt but also in completion. So we can go to content filter and configure a custom content filter for prompt as well as completion. There are 4 risk categories: hate, sexual, self-harm, and violence, and we can configure them. If it is low, then some of the content of that category might be allowed in the prompt and completion. Let's go to the demo, and here we are going to provision an Azure OpenAI resource. We are going to open the Azure OpenAI Studio, deploy the model, use the chat playground to test that model. We are going to experiment with system messages, prompts, few short examples, and also with parameters. And we are also finally going to take a look at how we can add or configure our own data sources. Let's go to demo. Alright, I am in the Azure portal. Make sure that your subscription has the access to Azure OpenAI service. You can go to and search for Azure OpenAI service. Click on it. All Azure AI services you will find under this category: AI search, face API, custom vision, and so on. You can click on create to create a resource of this service. Notice I have already created one for saving time as part of this demo. First, choose the subscription. then either create or choose the resource group, choose a specific location or region, give a name. I would give a unique name. Once done, choose a pricing tier. Currently only one pricing tier is available. Click on next. We can limit to either specific network, virtual network, or allow from all network. I'm going to choose first option. Here we can give key value pair as tags. I'm going to skip that for now. Once everything is validated and all good, we can then click on create to create a resource. Go back and open the existing resource. When you go to that resource, at the top you will be able to see endpoint. This is where you can grab the key and the endpoint if you are going to interact with this service programmatically or through API calls. Go to overview, click on go to Azure OpenAI Studio, and this will redirect us to the studio. Once we go to the studio, the first thing it will ask is to create a deployment. So first let's go to models and let's take a look at existing models. These are the pre-existing models given by OpenAI. We can also click on create a custom model with by going to data files. We can upload a new data set and configure it. We can look at what are the quotas for specific region, for specific scenarios. We can also look at how much of that quota is already provisioned for specific models and so on. Finally, we can go to content filters, create a customized content filter, and create it for. I'm going to cancel it out for now. Then we can go to deployment. Click on create new deployment. One additional thing I want to bring up, using generative AI models, or if you have already a model created, you can also deploy that model here. So I'm going to click on create new deployment. We can choose a specific one. For example, if we want to support multimodality, then we have to go for GPT-4 or 4.0. Otherwise, we can go with GPT 3.5 Turbo. 16K is sufficient for us to work around. Once you select, the model, let me select the model. We can specify the model version, deployment type, give it a name, and it is recommended that you put some kind of a rate limit so that other resources and other users are not thwarted. And click on create. I have already deployed one model, so let me go to chat playground. As I mentioned earlier, there are 3 sections in the chat playground. You can provide either a system message, or you can even select from a given template. So we can specify a system message template like a Shakespeare, IRS text chatbot, marketing writing assistant, and so on. Or you can give a custom system example. Then you have to scroll down and click on add examples. We are going to see that in a bit. If you click on chat capabilities, here you can configure speech to text and text to speech for giving input or getting the output from the model. If you click on view code, you can get the endpoint and the key and the code sample in a specific programming language to make an API call from those let me go back, close it. Okay, and on right hand side we will see the configuration parameters. So let me try put a prompt. How can I use generative AI to help me market a new product, and just press enter. Okay, now you might get this error. So let me just go back. You might get this error. So please wait for a few minutes, because although model deployment has succeeded, it takes some time to for the actual deployment. So it is going to take some time. In the meantime, let us walk through this chat playground. So I may even set it as, I'm going to take another example. I can use marketing writing assistant. It will give a pop-up. Click on update system message. So here I'm specifying the role or context as a marketing writing assistant, and then take it to a notepad. For example, create an advertisement for a new scrubbing brush. But this is a very general prompt. So there is there are other sessions on prompt engineering. I would suggest you you go through them. Wherein you can learn about detailed instructions as part of the prompt, so that the model will give you responses accordingly. So rather than saying give me the or create an advertisement for a new scrubbing brush, it is better to give some nuanced details. Okay, so if I have a few short examples, how can I configure it? So let me change the system message back to default one. Here, take a look at it. So if I give a system message as you are a news aggregator that categorizes news articles, I'm going to update the system message. And if I just give a question saying what kind of article is this, so this is related to drought and environment and climatic condition, so I would get some answer as a sentence or a paragraph. But rather I'm interested in getting the answer as a specific domain or industries examples to train our models to give us the answers in specific format. So let me give the first example. So if I have examples, it gives me two text boxes. One is the user, another is assistant. In the user, I will put the prompt, and in the assistant, I will put what answer am I expecting given such prompt. Similarly, I can add more examples. Once that is done, click on apply changes. If you forget this, the changes will not be affected. Click on continue. Click on continue, and now I can ask again to categorize this article. Let me go back and ask this question, and hopefully we get the answer. I send the prompt. The model deployment is taking time, unfortunately, but you would get the answer provided that model deployment has succeeded. Alright, similarly, I can go to parameters and configure max response, temperature, top key, and so on. Now let's take a look at how we can add our own data. For that, you will go to add your data. Click on add a data source. You can select any of these data sources. I'm going to upload the file, so I will choose upload files. Once you choose this, you will get a pop-up to select the subscription. You would need an Azure blob storage to store the uploaded files, and you would need an Azure AI search resource, data source data. At the same time, click on this turn on cost to give access. Give it a name, give index a name. For this, I will give Margis Travel and click on here. Click on browse for a file. I do have some PDF files which talk about Margis Travel Company and brochures of various cities in the world. It gives details of the hotels, tourist destinations, and so on. I will give the path, open all the files. Make sure you click on upload the files, and the status should be uploaded. Here we are going to choose keyword search type, because that will be quick. You can go for semantic search type also. Click on next. Here I am going to choose API key for data connection. Click on next. Wizard completes. It is going to ingest that data and index that data. And after indexing, we can try out few examples to make sure that we are getting data from the data sources as a grounded data. By the time it performs the ingestion and indexing complete, let's go to DALI model. So here we can give a prompt and also configure a few settings. Let me give a prompt as an elephant dancing on a skateboard. Let me also add a realistic image of an elephant dancing on a skateboard. So it depends on what is your imagination, and accordingly within few seconds or even a minute you would get images like this. Here you can see a astronaut flying or walking in the space, right? Similarly, you can go for settings. You can change the image size, the style, image quality, and so on to get appropriate images. Let's go back to chat playground and check whether indexing is complete. Yes, now you can see that the indexing has completed. I can also click on advanced settings and set these three parameters. I'm going to keep them as they are. Let me go to let's say I want to get details about hotels in New York. So I will put a query saying I would like where should I stay. And once the deployment is working, we would get the listed citations or references of it, which we can then open and check for more details. Okay, so today we learned about what is Azure OpenAI Studio. We looked at different models, how to deploy it, how to test it using various playgrounds, and even filter the content for any harmful content. We looked at some of the prompts, some of the designs, and how to get various completions. We looked at how to generate code as well as images using DALI model. And finally, how we can ground the responses by using our own data or data sources by implementing a technique called as retrieval augmented generation. I do have written articles for the steps we have already seen, plus programmatically how you can interact with the deployed model. You can go to cloud-authority.com and go through these articles. Thank you very much for joining today.